No, we're live.
All right, everybody, welcome to another exciting edition of Essos2Westeros alongside the Prince of Dorne himself, Josh Miller. I'm Dave Leno, north of the wall. Josh, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. That was such a great episode, and I just want to start talking about it.
We will, but first, we got to do some business. Today's program is sponsored by UPS. What can Brown do for you? By Pico Energy, an Exelon company. By Huey Magoo's for the best chicken fingers in Central Florida. Visit Huey Magoo's at hueymagoo's.com, and also by the best buffet in South Florida, Japanese style Shinju. All right, Josh, now that the business is out of the way, let's recount the episode that just aired, Dance of Dragons, episode 9. Now, as we know in Game of Thrones, episode 9 is usually the biggest episode of the season. You go back to season 1, where we had Baelor, where Ned got his head cut off. You go to season 2, episode 9, which is widely regarded as the best episode in the whole series, and that was Blackwater, the Battle of Blackwater, of course, where Tyrion unleashed the wildfire. And then you go to season 3, episode 9, and that was Reigns of Castamere, of course, the Red Wedding, another huge scene all over YouTube. We saw people's reactions. And then last season, we saw Watchers of the Wall, which was the battle, of course, in the north at the wall between the wildlings and the Night's Watch. And now we just saw episode 9, which tough to top episode 8, which we will dive into a little bit later, which was a fantastic episode last week. But this past episode, going in, I said to myself, Josh, that would this fall along the same lines as the previous episode 9s of the whole series? And to me, on the surface, it fell short in my book. There were some exciting moments, which we'll document. But just talking generally for a second here, I think the episode does not rank as high as Blackwater in my book. It doesn't give me the same shock factor if you didn't know what happened at the Red Wedding, if you weren't a book reader. And then the Watchers of the Wall, you could kind of compare, those two and put them on an even playing field. But I wasn't blown away like I was in episode 8, the last half of the episode there that we saw last week. But overall, I thought it was good. I didn't think it was great, especially the first half of this episode. I thought was kind of slow, and you know me as somebody who doesn't like slow TV shows. I like things that are moving and fast, and it was slow. I think the Dorne scenes need to be just thrown out. But there were some storylines that kind of got revisited, which I was happy about. But I'll set you up with this. Generally, I was a little bit disappointed. The ending I thought was good, but it wasn't a wow factor. How did you see it?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. This wasn't like a traditional 9 episode like they've done the past couple of years. I feel like they've almost moved that episode to episode 8, because last year you have the Viper in the Mountain, and that was a very big moment. And it's almost like this year you also had Hardhome, which was a big moment also in episode 8. So it's almost like the episode 9 to move to episode 8 in terms of that big moment. And episode 9 tends to be a series of big moments, but not the biggest moments. But I liked overall, this episode has been my favorite episode of the season, even better than last episode. We can talk about that now or later. But last episode, I felt like it was boring up until you got to the Hardhome scene. Like, get rid of the Hardhome scene. Last episode might have been the worst episode of the series, minus the Hardhome stuff, which actually brought up to one of the best episodes. This episode, I felt like, was firing on all cylinders. The two big things, obviously, were what was going on with Stannis and Shireen, and then, obviously, the end with Dany and Jorah and all that stuff. But, yeah, I didn't think there was a big moment.
The beginning of the episode, I was kind of twiddling my thumbs a little bit when they started out with Stannis and stuff, and
right, it was weird because they just showed like there wasn't any Ramsay stuff there. They just showed like these tents burning, and it was almost kind of weird because you didn't see like people burning them, things just almost like started catching fire out of nowhere. At first, I thought Melisandre was doing it. I didn't really know what to make of it.
Well, as soon as I'll say this, as soon not to sound like I knew what was going to happen, but when Davos went to Stannis and said, can Shireen come with me back to Castle Black? And he said no. I kind of had an inkling that something was going to happen because the sacrifice was talked about in a previous episode with Melisandre and Stannis. So
she was the sacrifice the Lord of the Light demanded. And to be honest, this is going to come back to Davos because he's the one who sent Gendry away. And it's going to come to him because I can already see how it plays out. It's going to play out. He's going to come back and he's going to say, or Stannis is going to say, well, you know what? If you just kept Gendry here, Shireen would be alive. And then some guy who you never knew would be sacrificed.
Yeah,
so,
it would be interesting.
So because you sent him away, you basically forfeit Shireen's life. I could see that being how it plays out.
Josh, will the sacrifice of Shireen, will that go down as one of the pivotal moments in the series when all things are said and done?
No. No. I mean, it's a big moment now because we're so fresh off of it, but like by tomorrow or by next week, I don't even think you'll remember it. She's not like a Ned Stark who's this big character. I mean, she's a very sympathetic character, and I liked her a lot. And like Stannis was one of my favorite characters, and after seeing that, I was shocked. I'm heartbroken now. I don't know what to think of him. But at the end of the day, he's not. This wasn't a pivotal moment. This is a pivotal moment for Stannis because this is the moment he really sells his soul to the devil. I mean, every time there's been an instance with Stannis where he's done something, he's always reflected on it. Like at the end of season 2. He loses Blackwater. He comes back and he goes, "Oh my God, I killed my brother." He's reflecting on his actions. A while later, he was going to sacrifice Davos, and he retracted that. And this is the final. He's threw his daughter into the fire. That's it. He's made that final jump. He's with Melisandre. Ride or die, and that's it.
I want to read a couple comments that a friend of mine sent me during the show, and I'll have to. Drink a glass or a little red from the arbor before I read these comments. Okay. Comment number 1. Quote, "This show just took effed up to another level." End quote. Quote, "You wait and see how many viewers they just lost over that. Not even kidding." End quote. Quote, "People won't be happy with that." End quote. So that is regarding those 3 quotes, the Shireen scene.
Is he going to stop watching? He said about the viewers. Is he going to stop watching?
No.
Exactly.
And I think
that's what everyone's saying. They said the same thing with Sansa's rape.
This show has a lot of balls. Okay, we've seen it in many scenes before, many rape scenes. We've seen it in a lot of controversial other scenes as well. And, it's fiction at the end of the day. Is it tough watching a kid get burned even though we don't see it actually on screen? Yes. And I'm okay with, obviously, that not being, on screen. Who wants to see that, right? So, off-screen killings is something that we can talk about for, another time, and we can relate that to many.
What do people think the show is? I mean, it's Game of Thrones. Like, you knew what you were getting into it the first episode when Jaime Lannister, a guy who was having sex with his sister, then goes and pushes a 10-year-old out the window. I mean, if that end scene of the first episode didn't tell you everything you need to know about this show, why are you still watching it at this point? Like, what do you think's going to happen next? Right. This isn't Disney. This is HBO Game of Thrones. It's come on.
Did you like how that scene in particular, though, like directing wise? I saw David Nutter was the director who's directed many other episodes, I believe, not just this season, but in seasons past, to my knowledge. I thought the scene was well directed. It kind of gave us the point of view in the eyes of, I guess, Shireen at first, and then it kind of switched over to, what's the queen's name? Celsia? How do you pronounce her? Selyse. Okay, it switches over to her, and then it switches over to Stannis' point of view. At one point, did you think, Josh, that Stannis was going to come and save his daughter, or you didn't think that would happen? Because there was a part of me that maybe somebody would have cut the rope before, like, the fire would go around. I really didn't think it would be the queen, though.
Yeah, no. As soon as he went and he hugged his daughter, and when they were still in the tent before she actually got marched out, I knew it was coming. I was like, wow, I can't believe this is actually happening. I didn't think he was going to show up, but when he did show up and he had that look on his face, I said, no, he's going through with it. And I wasn't surprised that Celeste jumped in. That gives a shading to her because literally, I think from the first moments we meet her, it's she's shunning her daughter and everything like that. So it's not a surprise that they made this trend that when it actually comes time to pay up, she jumped in and tried to change it. So I wasn't surprised at all. I mean, Stannis he's in it now. He's ride or die. And I don't know what's going to happen next with him.
Okay, but sticking with the Stannis that David and Dan, the creators of the show, developed from the start, are you okay with the fact that he sacrifices daughter? Do you think it's true to the character? We talk a lot about plot convenience, about how certain things are scripted just to move the plot along, move the story along, to make it easier for the writers and for the producers, what have you. So you're okay with the fact that Stannis stayed true to his guns there and let his daughter go?
Yeah, totally. I mean, if you want to talk about plot contrivance, this could be a good time to jump over to Dany and Tyrion. But no, Stannis made total sense. I mean, his story it started interesting at the beginning of the season with Castle Black and him and Jon Snow, and then it kind of died down. And this was a good twist to really bring his story to life again and say, wow, this guy is willing to burn his daughter alive. What else is he willing to do to win the Iron Throne? I mean, at this point, he is either going to be on the Iron Throne by the end of the series or he is going to be dead in a horrible way because there is nothing that's going to stop him from getting to the Iron Throne. We're not going to end this series and Stannis is still alive. We're going to end this series and he's going to be dead or he's going to be on the Iron Throne because there's no middle ground for him. That's the way it's got to be.
Well, I didn't like the fact that the 20 men who burned wherever they were situated with Stannis and his guys, I didn't like the fact that they didn't show Ramsay, they didn't show any of his men on screen. I thought that was a failure. I thought that was just something to just, kind of just for editing's sake and stuff, to not kind of dwell on that and kind of focus maybe on the Colosseum scene, which ended out the episode, which was certainly thrilling. But I would have liked the scene, and it didn't need to be a 10-minute sequence there, but they could have done a 2 to 4 minute little thing with Ramsay coming and torching the place. Then, the fact that it was torched and it was a wide shot a couple times of a couple tents burning up, and then you see Melisandre come out, then go back to a wide shot and stuff. To me, I don't think it did the scene justice. And I would have liked to seen at least, even if I didn't see Ramsay, I would have liked to seen a couple Bolton men actually on screen doing the damage, them fleeing, them, it just doesn't seem as if they did it. And the fact that, Davos came out and said, well, one of our guards or scouts, before I guess they would get, hanged, saw 20 men. I mean, come on. I mean, it just made... it just made it too easy, for the writers that, they said in the preview, 20 men were going to go, and halt Stannis, and 20 men did it without seeing one of them on screen.
Well, they couldn't show all the fire because the truth is, and I said this to you last week, but I feel like Game of Thrones has used it. They had their FX budget and they used it all, their FX CGI budget, and they used it all on Hardhome, so they couldn't do these amazing shots of all these tents burning, or even the dragon later on, which I'm sure we'll discuss, Jim. But I was a little bit surprised at the amount of CGI that went to that scene, the lack of it.
Before we get to Tyrion and Dany in that scene, which we will discuss at length, I have a problem with the Dorne scenes, as do many people. I think while it's nice to show a critical family that is prevalent in the books to a degree, I don't think they're meaningful to the story at all here. I think Jaime going down to rescue Marcella and Tristan, have him serve in the small council, and Bronn, I just think the whole thing, the Sand Snakes, total disaster. Doesn't do anything for me. No, it doesn't do anything for a lot of people. I think it's a waste of time that they could be spending more time. I would love to see Arya's story more, Sansa's story more, and you could kind of bring that to new heights, even more so.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. They've announced we don't know what's coming. So, look, the way they introduced the Dorn stuff is terrible. I don't like it at all. I think they should have gone back to the drawing board and redone it. But we also don't know what's coming. And they just announced a few days ago, I read that Game of Thrones is going to be filming in Spain for season 6. So to me, that gets my brain turning, and that tells me that there's more to this Dorn story. I'm not liking it now, but it may have some payoffs in the future. So even though I don't like it, I'm not totally willing to write it off at this point. It's boring. I mean, it's not a good story. It's definitely been the weak part of the season, but I feel like it could have a payoff. And because it could have a payoff, I'm not willing to write it off totally. But I do think that for next season, I hope David and Dan and all the other writers and producers go back to the drawing board and say, okay, how can we make this interesting? Because unless Dorn becomes a big deal, like it's just not good. Now, Oberyn from last season was a great character. The problem is he's a great character, and they've gone to Dorn, and these people aren't characters. They're just not interesting, and that's a big problem. It isn't necessarily they're good Dorn. It's that they're just not interesting characters. You know, Illyria Sand, the wife or the paramour, whatever, of Oberyn, who was talking to Jaime earlier. She's not interesting as a character. So I don't really care that she's on screen. And I've said this to you before, as a result of Jaime being in Dorne and all that, he's become less an interesting character. And I don't know where, as a character, he goes. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jaime is the next character to bite the dust, either next episode or very early on next season, just because his character isn't going anywhere. I mean, he's just getting sent on these missions to Dorne, which is a bad storyline anyway. Dorne is not a good story. It's not compelling. It's not as compelling as the other stories that are going on, which I would much rather have seen more of Sansa this episode or anything else, really.
I liked the fact that, okay, Jaime was out to rescue Marcella. Like, that, to me, was kind of cool on the surface, but
we don't even know really Marcella. It's like we know Shireen, and because Stannis burned her, it's affection. You know, we feel something. But if we didn't know Shireen, if they didn't introduce us to Shireen and they just showed us Stannis burning his own daughter, would it have the same effect? Probably not. Marcella, we don't really know her at all. So Jaime's going to rescue someone we don't know or care about. Like, who cares? And it's not like they've talked about her throughout the series. Like, they've only mentioned her when it's convenient to come mention her. So when she comes up, it's like, okay, so Jaime's going to rescue. I mean, they might as well just call it Person X. Right. Jaime's going to do X journey, because rescuing Marcella, like, who is Marcella? Like, we know who she is, but she's not a character. She's a MacGuffin. She's just an item that they're going to rescue.
The fight scene that took place in the earlier estupids of the season was cut terribly. I can go on and on about that scene, but it was just fake with doubles and stuntmen, and it just wasn't good. And it was one of the worst fight scenes. I think Elio and Linda from Westeros.org even commented exactly how many cuts took place, and it was just edited terribly. And I think the director and the editor of that particular episode would love to have that one back. But like you said, you know, maybe they'll develop this Dorne situation into something that next season might catch us off guard and we might come to love.
It needs a payoff. Like, if it wants to pay it off, like the Sand Snakes, for instance, because they obviously introduced them to be big characters, like, they need to kill Jaime, because that would make them important. That would say, wow, like, they just took out the Kingslayer, you know, and they're not. They're not important. So unless they do something important, unless something important happens in Dorne, who cares? Because, like, right now, Jaime has Marcella. Jaime is going back to King's Landing. So the Dorne storyline is done unless something happens.
Now, with the Dornish storyline in mind, if Jaime goes back with Marcella and Prince Tristan to King's Landing, I don't know how the Sand Snakes get revenge, you know, with them being all the way down south and then going back to King's Landing. So that, again, talking about plot convenience and stuff.
Well, they are filming in Spain next season, supposedly, from what I read. So somehow I imagine there's going to be some scenes in Dorne. So, I don't know what that means. I don't know what's coming. but I guess all we can talk about is what's going on right now. And right now, I think we can both agree, and I think a lot of other people agree, the Dorne stuff is the weakest part of an unfortunate weak season.
Now, you are someone who has told me at length that the Arya stuff doesn't faze you at all. And to me, I love her storyline as somebody who's read the books, but I haven't read them in a while now. And obviously, 1,200 pages each book. My comprehension's not that great. I'll just be very upfront about that. But I do, from what I do remember, as I love the ride that George R. R. Martin, the author of the series, of the books, I love how he takes her on these different paths, and I think it's really interesting, and more interesting than a lot of other characters. Now, with the show, and now that she reacquainted with Jock and Hagar in Bravos, and she's at the House of White and Black, and she's doing all these things now, and she's trying to live up to the faceless gods and what have you. I was a little disappointed tonight that we did not see her first kill as what's the name they give her? Lyanna. Her name is Cat in the books. Cat of the Canals is actually her chapters in the books in this particular instance.
Can't bring up the name Catelyn. Don't want anyone reminding them of Catelyn Stark.
I guess they don't want to confuse people, maybe?
Right. Well, I guess that's why I don't read the book, but I guess that's why they changed, like, Theon's sister's name, because I know it was something different in the book, and it's Yara in the show.
Right. Her name in the book is Asha. A-S-H-A.
And there's another character named Asha who's with Rickon now. They're still walking somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, they're just trying to, which is, that's fine. I mean, listen, I'm not a purist, okay? I'm okay with all the deviation. There's a lot of people out there in Game of Thrones land that want this show to stick to the books and stick to the facts. To me, as somebody who honestly, I'm not a fantasy guy, I'm not into this particular genre, but the storyline hooked me as soon as I watched the first couple episodes. It was tough to kind of grasp all the characters, and we've talked about that on previous shows, how tough of a series this is to film because you have such an ensemble cast in different parts of the world, unlike a show like Oz that was on HBO, or even The Sopranos that had big casts as well, but they were kind of Sopranos in New Jersey and New York, and then you had Oz, which was in that prison altogether, so it was definitely a lot easier. But I digress. Okay, so the Arya stuff, to me, I really would have liked to seen her whack somebody tonight. Little disappointed that nothing happened. I know she followed Meryn Trant. I know that sets up for maybe something to happen involving the two next episode. But to me, they could have done something there. Even if they killed the gambler, the guy who first bought the oysters from her in the prior episode, I thought that would have been good for Arya, and it would have moved her storyline along, because to me, it's a case in point of what we saw in the first few episodes of this season, which have been disappointing in my view, and that it's stagnant. It's not moving. I mean, they're going like 25 and a 55. They need to get it going. They need to rev up the engines a little bit and start doing something. Like, they could have taken that episode last week and put that as episode 3 of the season, or 4. It didn't need to be in episode 8. The problem that I have, and I love this show, but it's so backlogged. I mean, and so many other shows out there that not just are on HBO or Showtime or Max, they can be network shows that way more than I do, that have great episodes in the first 3 of the season as opposed to the last 3. And I would have liked to seen Arya do some damage. But I want you to discuss why you don't take a particular liking with what they're doing with Arya's journey.
Whoa! That's a loaded question. Well, this is great right now. Arya's going to go Oren Ishii on Meryn Trant. That's what it looks like is going to happen. They set it up.
But you told me you don't like so much. You're not wowed.
Right. Okay. Well, just this season alone, not this episode particularly, but this season alone, Arya's storyline's been pretty boring. I mean, she made it to the House of I watched, I think it was episode 2 or 3 when she made it to the House of Black and White. She
Right.
got in, and we learned Shaq and Hagar. Oh, okay, nice surprise. And then she's just been mopping the floors, and that's really it. There hasn't really been much of a story to her. Like, we went into that room with all the faces and stuff, but other than that, I mean, that's not really anything. That's not really interesting. Like, okay, that's a cool scene, but again, that's not really that interesting. So hopefully next episode she'll, whack Maren Trent, Onishi style. They set it up where he likes younger girls. She could sneak in there as a younger girl and take him out. But Arya's storyline, it's not that I don't like it. I do like it, but it's very overrated. People talk about it like it's the best. And I think Sansa's storyline's a little bit better in comparison. But Arya's storyline this season has not been the best. I think when we look back at all the other seasons and all the other Arya stories that have happened, this season is the slowest by far. Nothing's really happened to her. She made it to the House of Black and White, and she's just kind of been there all season. The end of the season, I'm assuming she'll become, not become, but she will finally kill someone, and then we'll move on from there. But to me, this season has very much been a training season, one big training montage of she'll mop the floor, she'll kill someone, all of a sudden she's Rocky now, and she'll be a master assassin.
Do you think that she will? I mean, it's clear, and they hint at this, and since when she buried the sword into the rocks, her needle, right outside, the House of Black and White, that there's still a piece of Arya Stark in her, as opposed to her being the faceless man. As somebody who didn't read the books, and you in this show is obviously deviating from the books, do you feel that somehow she turns against Jaqen and Hagar eventually and leaves Bravos back to Westeros? Or do you feel like next season she's still in Bravos?
I don't think she turns against Jaqen and Hagar. I mean, Jaqen and Hagar at this point knows, even if he doesn't know she, hid the sword, he knows she's not, going to become a faceless man. This is really just a means to an end. I mean, he even said it in 1 episode, 2 episodes, 3 episodes ago, where you're not ready to become a faceless man, but you're ready to become someone else. So I think he knows that she's not really seriously into this, religion, unlike Stannis. She's just kind of doing it too. Okay, eventually I will learn to become an assassin. I'll go back to Westeros and go kill some people. Do I think next season she's going to be back in Westeros? Maybe at the end of next season. I mean, she just got to Bravos. I think she's got some more stuff to do there. I can't imagine her going back just yet. I don't really know where her story's going in the future. Like she kind of ran into all the people in Westeros, and now that she's in Essos, she's kind of on her own. I mean, she ran into Maren Trent tonight.
Yeah.
So maybe she'll do something with that. Maybe she'll run into Daenerys and Tyrion and Jorah. That would be really cool.
You mentioned that this maybe is not as exciting as the Sansa stuff. Harder scene for you to watch, was it Ramsay and Sansa with Theon watching the rape scene, or Shireen getting burned or sacrificed off screen? What was more nauseating to you as a viewer?
Right. I mean, well, the way they filmed it, for me personally, the Sansa stuff, it's interesting because the way they filmed it was they had the Sansa being raped, but then the ending shot is really on Theon as it's from his perspective. Whereas this with Shireen, it was more about, Stannis's look, Shireen's look, Selyse, her mother's look. Yeah. So I think this was a more visceral, for me, experience. Because, I mean, Shireen, she's just innocent. She's just this innocent little girl who, what's to hate about her? And they burned her alive. They didn't like her. They burned her alive. I mean,
I think it's terrible. I liked her.
People are not going to leave this show. When people say that, it's just the gut reaction, oh my God, I'm going to leave the show. Like, yeah, right. You're not going to leave the show. In fact, you're definitely going to watch it next week. You're going to DVR. You're going to do everything you can to watch it. That's just BS, I mean, again, you're watching HBO. You're watching Game of Thrones. What do you think you're getting into? I mean, are you stupid?
True. No, I mean,
people who watch Game of Thrones, I want to know if people who watch Game of Thrones walk into the show and say, wow, I don't think anything bad's going to happen this episode. I think it's all going to be really nice, and maybe there'll be a sword fight, and that's it. No, there's going to be people raped. There's going to be people burned alive. There's going to be bad things. I mean, come on. It's season 5. what the hell? I mean, really? People getting raped, burned. Like, yes, it's a big shocking moment, but people say, oh, they're leaving the show. No, you're not. Just calm down. You're not leaving the show. It's like those people who film themselves during the red wedding. Like, they were shocked. Like, yeah, like you have a camera situated on yourself during a scene of a show. Like, no, you knew that was coming. You're acting a certain way to get attention on Twitter or Facebook or whatever.
I agree. I think people will still watch. Listen, it's like sports. People love to hate or love. Athletes.
Well, with sports, that's a different situation because with sports, I mean, someone wins the Super Bowl and literally people go and burn the streets down. I mean, if the Eagles, I always thought to myself, if the Eagles lose the Super Bowl, there's going to be 10 people jumping off the Ben Franklin Bridge that day. Suicide.
Well, it's no laughing matter, but my comparison was that people love to, you kind of love to hate, certain athletes, and it's at the point where, you watch somebody like LeBron who's playing in the NBA Finals now. A lot of people don't like his style, but you watch the guy because you respect what he does. So a lot of people, how I'm comparing it is, okay, you don't like maybe some of these controversial scenes, but you are still marveled at the spectacle of the show and what it brings to the table. So that's where I was going with the parallel there. But I do like. I guess I just want to quickly touch before we get to the Coliseum scene. I do like the Sansa stuff. I do hope that Brienne's sitting at, watching her. To me, I mean, come on. Let's go here. I mean, why is she just sitting and waiting for a candle? She knows the candle's not going to happen. She just go and rescue the girl and life.
How is she going to rescue her? I mean, they're in a castle. Well, she's clearly guarded by Bolton men. She's one woman, and
the Hound's going to come back with her.
The Hound is not coming back. If the Hound comes back, like there are other people you could say they'll come back, and I go, oh, okay. The Hound, if he comes back, I think that'll be. I don't want to say character. That'll be a blow to the show. Like, come on. You killed him. You gave the Hound a very good ending. There's no need to revisit him. I love the Hound. He's one of my favorite characters on the show, but there's no need to bring him back on the show. You gave him a great end. Let's just move on with the stories. But with Brienne, Brienne, I don't know if she's like in winter. I guess she must be in Winterfell somewhere because she can't be. I don't really understand like geography of where she is because she has to be in Winterfell to see that candle. Even if you could see the candle. But what is she going to do? I mean, she's one girl. She's one woman, and she's with a squire who doesn't even know how to, ride a horse, let alone fight. So there's no way Brienne could do anything. They don't have a story for her. I don't mind them just putting her to the side. In fact, I wish they did that with more people. Like, you don't have a story, just put them to the side versus just constantly bring them up. Like, they don't have a story for Brienne now. There's no reason to bring her into the fold. And I'm sure next episode they'll bring her back, and when she has a story, they'll bring her back, and she's in play. She's a piece, she's a pawn, and they move the pawn to the right place, and they're just waiting for the time to strike. So I don't mind that Brienne is there. I mean, they moved the whole Winterfell story along decently, and it looks like from the preview they're going to, obviously have some Sansa stuff next week, and that'll be interesting. But I don't feel like we need to see Brienne right now. I mean, there's nothing for her to do. She's waiting. What's she going to do?
So
she's waiting.
At last, we finally get to see Drogon go to
Good segue.
Thank you. In the Coliseum scene, which I guess was, I saw like a behind the scenes thing. I guess was shot with some extras, and then when they do those wide shots, obviously that's CGI. But I believe they did shoot like half of the Coliseum. For some particular, if I have that, if you know what I'm referencing, that behind the scenes video that they have on demand on HBO, and that they showed, or like kind of behind the scenes. I think it was before the season started. So anyway, overall, the scene was a lengthy scene. It of course wasn't a short scene by any stretch, and how it started, I think you kind of knew when the slavers were going at it with one another or the slaves were going at it with one another or the fighters, that you knew Jorah was going to reappear. And I love the fact that he came back. To me, going into this episode with Jorah was either the guy lives and becomes a champion or he dies. And I thought at one particular moment when there were 3 people left and he had the spear in the guy who was sitting down, I thought it was going to be like a Viper in the Mountain type of scene, right, where the guy with the spear didn't die and came back and would have sliced Jorah's throat from behind. I did think that was a possibility at the time. But then the third guy, because they actually isolated just Jorah and the guy who he just put the spear in. They didn't show the third guy. I knew the third guy was there in the armor, and obviously the armor guy killed the guy that was down, or the guy that was leaning over Jorah, I guess, if I remember that correctly. And then they went at it. I thought also at one point, Josh, that Dany was going to stop it. But then finally, we see the Sons of Harpy, because at the end of episode 4, and we've talked about this off camera, at the end of episode 4, you see Barristan Selmy die, Grey Worm injured, and you see, the Sons of the Harpy go at it. And then for the next few episodes, you do not hear anything about that. It's just like they magically go away. I'm happy with the fact that the show brought them back in this particular scene. I thought it went well, and there were so many. And then when Jorah throws the spear in Dany's direction and magically goes after, and hits one of the Sons of the Harpy that actually got through and almost got to Dany, I thought that was great. I was like, why is he throwing it there at first? And then obviously, and then you see all these, then it pans over to all these people in the gold mask. So thank goodness they brought them back, because the show did not reference them after season 4. I mean, after episode 4, I guess in episode 5, they showed it opened with a shot of Selmy lying there in state, I guess, if you will. So I thought it was a good scene. You kind of knew with the episode title, and you and I were even saying that you knew the dragon was going to come at the end and free them when they were trapped in the middle of that Colosseum. I thought it was great. Was I blown away from what took place? Absolutely not. I had a feeling, for them to just die there to the Sons of Harpy, you knew that wasn't going to happen, obviously. But how they were going to get out, that was a question. But you knew a dragon would come into play. Thought it was good, like I said from the very beginning when we started the show, but I didn't think it was great, like the Hardhome stuff.
Yeah, from a character perspective, Jorah's been one of my favorite characters, and this has been a great season for him. I mean, he started off in total exile, gets Tyrion, has a little bit of hope, gets infected with grayscale, gets captured by slavers, gets back to Dany. Dany turns him away, goes in front of Dany to fight, and then you don't know what's going to happen, and he finally wins her back. Like, this was just such a great storyline for him, and I was so happy in the moment, but at the same time I'm so sad because he has grayscale. There is no way. I just, like, on one hand it's great. He almost, like, if he died because of the grayscale, it would be his happy ending, because even though he dies of his terrible disease, he gets Daenerys back, and that is just so worth it. It's so good. I mean,
is it safe to say that he got her back?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yes. They literally, as soon as he saved her. He got the Sons of the Harpy with the spear, which I'll talk about in a second. He got him with the spear. He put his hand out to Dany. He didn't know if he was going to win her back, and she took his hand. And during the whole when he was fighting all the other gladiators, or whatever you want to call them, you could tell she was worried for him. She wanted him to survive. Even though she hates him, she still loves him. It's just she couldn't bring herself to do anything. And yeah, he has her back. She has him back. I don't want to say it's all good there. I'm sure there's some things that they need to work out still, but for now, they're back. Now she's gone on the dragon, so we don't know actually the next time they'll interact, and the next time they could interact, he could be dying of grayscale. But right. She has him back. He's back on. She knows he has her back. There's a great book out called Power. I don't know if you ever read it, David. It's one of my favorite books. It's by Robert Greene. It's called The 48 Laws of Power. And one of the rules of power is you can all I don't say you can always. I'm just paraphrasing here. It's a really good chapter. You have to read it. But someone who is against you as your enemy, they always have more to prove. So you'll always want them back. So someone like Jorah, I always was thinking this in my head, that someone like Jorah who has betrayed Dany, it's almost in Dany's best interest to take her back because he has so much more to prove to her, to earn back her loyalty, versus someone like Dario Naharis, who never really had to prove his loyalty. He's never really been tested. Like, he's fought a couple guys, but he's never really been tested. Whereas someone like Jorah, you know, he has betrayed her in some senses, but then he's come back to his senses and been by her side. So that's a really great analogy I have. If you got what I was saying, maybe I was just rambling.
I've never read the book, but that it's interesting, right?
Yeah,
it definitely has a lot to prove. But were you? So you were?
I was so happy. You know, I was so happy because I would just come off of the Shireen, and honestly, I was like, wow, like I cannot believe that happened with Shireen, and I was devastated. And the Jorah stuff, I'm like, wow, like that's great. I'm so happy he's back. It sucks that he has I didn't think he was going to die. I knew he has the grayscale. I don't think they have that as a red herring. I think that's going to play out in some way. But I'm very happy he's back in the fold. Now, the Harpy stuff, I always said to you that I was so upset that after episode 4, the Sons of Harpy just kind of disappeared.
Right.
And for them, you know, and I was very upset, and I'm very happy about the ending because I thought that was a great payoff to them, that they have been secretly brooding and plotting and planning, and this was the moment to take her out, and they put all their efforts into this moment, and that Jorah was the one who saved her just made it a really great moment. Now, if you want to talk about the dragon stuff, I'll talk about the dragon stuff because I wasn't a big fan of that. I said this earlier, but I felt like the CGI, they put all their money into last episode, and the dragon, even though it was very cool, and obviously it's a cool thing they're doing, I felt like it wasn't a money shot, especially when Dany gets on the dragon and it ends on Tyrion's face. I felt, and they're on Jorah's face and Missandei's face and all that. I felt like in some way they should have shown her, like I know they should have a kind of side shot of her flying away, but I felt like there really should have been a money shot of her on the dragon flying off to who knows where, dragon blowing fire throughout the place. The arena's totally on fire. I don't felt like we got that. I felt like they shot it in a way that didn't capture how big it really could have been. I don't really know what it's like in the books or if it's even in the books at this point, but I felt like that scene, in terms of the dragon, was toned down. The Jorah stuff I loved. The dragon stuff was cool. I'm glad the dragon came in, but like the CGI on it, it didn't seem as grand as it should have been, especially because we haven't seen Drogon all season. Like, you haven't seen any of the dragons this season. You finally, except for one point, you see him now, and it's a bit of a letdown. It's still really good, but in terms of like how big I think it could have been and how, I mean, come on, they have a lot of money. I know they have a budget, obviously, but I feel like this could have been a bigger scene. I don't know what you think, but I feel like it could have been a bigger scene. It was still a really cool scene, a really great scene, but it could have been bigger. And I don't think here's the question, David. Are the dragons growing any bigger, or is this as big as they get? You know? Because at this point, I mean, this is just going into the future, but if this is as big as they're going to get, I mean, Dany should just be going to invade Westeros at this point.
And the other two are still chained up, right?
Right. The other two are still chained up. And they did show, which I thought was interesting, they did show that, you know, when Dany goes to the dragon, the dragon roars at her. So it does, you know, continue the storyline that these dragons are still dragons, you know, even though Dany can tame them in some way, they're still going to be dragons, and she will never have 100% control over them. So I like that. But at the same time, you know, she does have control over them. The dragon came to save her. She got on the dragon's back and she flew away. So she does have control over them. And at this point, if they're not getting any bigger, if she does have control over them, why isn't she planning her invasion of Westeros? She has the armies. She has the dragons. She has her advisors. What is stopping her? You know, we're going into season 6, assuming this is a 7-season show. She should be getting her ships and going to Westeros at this point.
No, I agree with that. And that would just, and for me, that would speed things up. So that would be great. Now,
well, they have to do. I mean, what is she going to do? Stay in Marine for next year and fight the Harpies? I mean, the Harpy thing was cool. The payoff was cool, but the story's over.
And died.
Well, who died?
Zos Larac got
her husband.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, remember, he was a slave master before. So even though he says he was a good slave master, I mean, how many good slave masters? That's like saying, oh, this guy was a good Nazi. I mean, come on. He owned slaves. Like, there's no such thing as a good slave owner.
Right.
I don't really care that he died. Good.
I don't think a lot of people cared either.
Right. And they needed somebody to die in that scene who was a character, so that seemed like the right person to die.
Right. So Tyrion, Missandei, Dario Naharis, and Jorah all leave.
Jorah.
They leave unscathed.
Well, I don't know. That's the weird thing. Like, she flies away in her drone.
You know.
Right? Yeah. I mean, they're gonna survive. Like, it's not like we come back next episode and no, they're all dead. But like, they're still surrounded by these sons of harpies. Like, what do they do? Just say, "Ah, she's gone. All right, we're going home."
Well, that's the thing, because when they flew away, when Dany flew away on Drogon, I believe there were still some sons of harpy living and still roaming around.
Right? No, there were, and there's a lot of things that you just kind of have to, like. I will nitpick, but I'm willing to forget some stuff. Like, she has the Unsullied, this huge army. She supposedly has the Second Sons and all these huge army. Where are they? They're just not there. And also the Sons of Harpy, there seemed like there was a lot of them, like a lot of them.
Yes.
And it, like, again, like, I'm willing to forget it because it's not something I really need to read into. But it's almost like there are so many of them that it's like they hid it all this time. They were able to hide and not. I mean, I'm willing to forgive it, but it's just interesting.
Okay, but what was the difference to you? I'll just speak for myself here. Comparing the Heart of Home stuff, how that was edited, it just took me to that place where I felt like I was there and I was on, Jon Snow and Tormund's side against these White Walkers, and we were totally outmatched. And the way that was edited was just brilliant. And obviously, like you said, a lot of money was put into that. It was just like kind of a movie fight scene that you would see in probably your favorite show, Guardians of the Galaxy, or another, like an Avengers thing. It was probably, I think it's safe to say, I'm not fans of those movies, but I think it's safe to say it's that Hard Home stuff was on that scale. And I think different from that, this particular scene in the Coliseum was not on that scale. I think they obviously was a huge set for them, and obviously I'm sure that was a lot of money to spend. But as far as the editing goes and stuff like that,
for sure,
it didn't do it for me like Hard Home did. Like, I just walked away from that whole episode. First part, I agree with you, wasn't the most hard-hitting stuff, but to spend the last, I think I got like from like the last 34 at the 34-minute mark and then to the end, when I was playing it back, that's how much time they spent north of the Wall, which I think was beautifully edited. I thought it was directed brilliantly, and I think this episode, this last part, doesn't hold a candle to what we saw at the end of episode 8.
For sure. I mean, the Hard Home stuff, I mean, I have to have some more distance from it, but that was probably one of the best, if not the best, like, scene in the series thus far. Like, that was an awesome set piece. They used it just for that that last 20 minutes of the show, and that was great. Like, that was amazing. And yeah, it doesn't hold a candle to this thing in the Coliseum. It was cool. The dragons, Dany, like, I really enjoyed this scene, with Dany and the dragon and Jorah. Like, I thought it was really great. I think the dragon, if they made the dragon bigger, if they made it more destructive, I feel like that's where they fell apart. Like, they should have really made it that this dragon just destroyed these guys. I understand that she wanted to get on the dragon and fly away because the dragon was injured, but I felt like the dragon really should have done a lot more damage. And I guess, again, they just didn't have the money to do that.
And it was a chance finally for Tyrion to see the dragon. Now, it's not the first time that Tyrion saw a dragon, because remember when he was with Jorah in, what was it, Valyria, where the stone men were?
Right. This is the first time Tyrion's actually seen the dragons in action.
Correct.
On a big scale.
So I think, and they showed, like, kind of, they gave us like a sense of like how he felt when he saw that stuff, and you saw his facial expression, that he was, amazed and in awe. So that, kind of goes on.
But who cares? But, like, that's not something that's.
Well, he knows that she's the real deal now.
Right. I mean, we could go and talk about this from last episode, but to me, this was not a moment for Tyrion. This was a moment for Jorah and Dany
Right.
and the dragon. This was Jorah's moment to come back, and they did that part, which was fantastic. Give him a solid A for that whole storyline. The Tyrion stuff, like I understand that they need to sell it, but when the series finally ends, Dave, are you gonna? And they say, give us Tyrion's storyline. I think this is going to be a minor part of it. It's going to be, Tyrion met up with Dany, and then you're just going to move on to the next thing. Whereas Jorah, this was a big story, and it builds and builds and builds and builds. And Tyrion, for this part, I think it's more that, okay, he joined up with Dany, he saw the dragons, but it's not a pivotal moment for Tyrion. Tyrion is on Dany's side. He doesn't need to be sold. Tyrion believes in it. There's nothing else Tyrion needs to do.
Where the hell is Varys then? That's my complaint.
Where is Varys?
I
I mean,
mean,
he just lost Tyrion. He lost a Lannister, and he's just like, okay, well,
yeah.
I'm just going to stay in the he's still in the brothel. He's still in the brothel. Well, actually, no, he's not in the brothel. He's a eunuch. But
yeah, I was gonna say you can't use anything there.
Right.
But,
well, you'd be surprised, as Roz said. You'd be surprised.
Yeah. Well, I
Well,
think
maybe
that
you go to Spearmint Rhino, and we'll ask them what they can do in that situation. We'll ask the experts.
well, listen, a limo will pick us up anytime. So
For sure.
And
I wouldn't know.
you would, I would.
Yes.
but-
Okay, either way, I just want to say this with the going back to that scene. Tyrion, I felt, was very inconsequential in this moment. They needed him to talk and say a few things, to be when him, Dario Naharis, and I forget the other guy's name, were talking to Dany. But I felt that Tyrion just, at this point, he's just kind of there, and he's just kind of Dany's sidekick. He doesn't really have his own story at the moment, which is a shame. And I'm sure that'll change quickly. But at the moment, he's just kind of Dany's sidekick and her advisor. So they don't really need to do anything with him. And to kind of focus on him at the end of this scene and this episode, it almost felt like a little bit of a waste when they could have, I felt like, focused it more.
Took away from Jorah's moment in.
No, that's not what I'm saying. Jorah, because I felt like Jorah had his moment like early on in that half. He got Dany, done. What I'm saying is at the end, they should have focused more on the dragon and Dany money shot. And I felt like I was waiting in my head, like when that dragon, I'm like, all right, where's the money shot of him flying away from this arena in total flames? And that didn't happen. They just kind of showed Dany and the dragon on the side of the screen. You see it go away, and they, I guess, pan over to Tyrion and Jorah and gang. And that was a little bit disappointing, but it was still a great ending. I still enjoyed the ending very much, but it wasn't. And if we go back and we say episode 9s, which are the big episode 9s, I think this one, I don't want to say falls flat. It does not fall flat, in my opinion. It doesn't rank up to the Baelor, Battle of Blackwater, the Reigns of Castamere, so on and so forth.
I agree 100%. But I am glad for Jorah's sake. I like his character. I've liked his character. He's been one of my favorites really since the first season, and all he did for Dany with the Dothraki. I mean, that's something to be said. So I'm happy that they didn't kill him off here, and they could have.
Yeah.
They absolutely they could have got rid of another character here.
He has grayscale, so I can't. Again, what I was saying before, his character just. I don't see him having a happy ending. I want him to have a happy ending, but it's almost impossible for him. Yeah, he's not going to get a happy ending, even
with this show,
grayscale but
with this show, and I think we've alluded to this with the Shireen stuff and with other people as well. When you go into the show, you can lose any character you like at any time. Really. And tomorrow, today Sansa's living. Tomorrow the next episode she may be gone for some reason.
Well, can we just talk about that for a little bit? Because I think we got a lot of this episode. Can we start talking about the rest of this season? There's one episode left. Next week's the finale. I'm very excited for it.
What would be a big payoff to you?
Payoff? Payoff. That's a good question. There's so many stories I'm running through my head. I mean, I would like to see some sort of payoff with Dorne. I feel like I don't want to say they focused on Dorne, but they brought it into the fold this season.
See, I think Dorne's done. I think it's done for the season.
It could be done. They could cut their losses, but I almost feel like, because you asked me what would I like to see a payoff of, for me, if somehow in episode 10 they paid off Dorne, and I will say how I think they could pay off Dorne in a second, that I feel like, I don't want to say it would justify it, but at least it would make it more palatable. Now, I don't think this is, let me back up. I think, and I said this earlier, Jamie is a character to me who his storyline's done. There's nothing more for him to do. He was a bad guy in the beginning, and then he had his redemption arc, and now he's a good guy, and he's rescuing his niece's daughter. I feel like he could die in Dorne by the hands of the Sand Snakes or Ilaria Sand or someone else, and they could set Dorne up as they just killed the Kingslayer, they killed the Lannister brother. Now, are they a big deal? I mean, think about it. Jamie went to Dorne, and he got murdered there. That's a big deal, right? They have to do something with Dorne at that point. Right. That has to justify somehow Dorne being a big player next season. And it would be a big death. Jamie would be a huge, major, major death. And like I said, I feel like Jamie's story's done. For me, there's nowhere – I mean, I'm sure they will – they could write something if that doesn't happen, and I'm sure they will. But for me, Jamie's story is – it's over. He had his story. He had his arc. There's nothing else. There's nowhere else for him to go. So that's what I would like to see as a payoff. Sansa obviously seems like they have to pay off something with her and Ramsay. I would be surprised if at the end of next episode Sansa is still stuck in Winterfell under Ramsay Bolton's thumb. Something should happen there. We're definitely going to get the payoff with Arya killing Meryn Trant. I mean, come on. If that doesn't happen, I will eat my phone. I mean, Meryn Trant's dead. There's no way this season ends with Meryn Trant still alive. Arya's going to whack him, period. I don't know what's going to happen with Dany. I feel like Dany's story could be over. We might see it a little bit next episode, but I could see Dany not being in next episode. I could see her, they're at the Pyramid of Marine or wherever, and she's just not there, and they're just waiting for her. And they need to, I don't want to say have a payoff with Jon Snow's storyline at the Wall, because I felt like the Hardhome stuff was almost an ending, but they need to almost have an epilogue to that, and something needs to happen, because they're obviously brewing, there's some dissent with the Night's Watch. There are people who are looking at Jon and saying, why did this guy just let through all these wildlings? There's a lot of stuff that seems to be brewing, right. And what I'm wondering is, are they going to pay it off in episode 10, or are they just going to do what they've done for a lot of other seasons and say, no, this is just teasing you, but we're going to pay this off in season 6. And I hope they pay it off next episode, but I don't want to say my fear, my thought is they're going to push it to season 6 and just kind of that's what they've done.
Well, I guess the big moment for me for next episode I would assume, I agree with you. I think that we can take it as something that's just going to happen probably in the beginning part of the episode with Arya killing Meryn Trant. That will not shock me. But if there is some sort of deal, I really want to see something happen with Ramsay, Theon, and Sansa, and Brienne. Whether that leads to Sansa getting rescued, Ramsay dying, Theon dying, or rescuing Sansa. I want something substantial to happen there, because that has been a big focus for this season, and also going back to last season with Littlefinger too. Okay,
right. Where's Littlefinger at all?
Right. I mean, I guess
last we saw him in King's Landing.
I guess he's still there. Like him and Varys, we've talked about this, are two of our favorite secondary characters, and they have not had a big role, Varys in particular, since the first couple episodes. So I would like to, my big thing is how I can get wowed is for something like a rescue plan, some sort of plot that takes place in Winterfell involving the Boltons, whether it involves Ramsay or the characters that I mentioned. That would be terrific for me. Dorne stuff, I don't want to see next episode. Traditionally, the 10th episode, the season finale.
Do you ever want to see the Dorne stuff again? Or are you done with it? If Jamie just leaves Dorne and they cut their losses.
Done with it now. I'm not saying I wouldn't want to. I actually do like Prince Doran. I like the fact that he's willing to give second chances and all that stuff. I think that's the kind of he's the total opposite of
everyone else.
Exactly. So I think that's good. I think it's good to show to give someone that's come comes from a little bit of a different perspective and a little different philosophy he brings to the table. I think that's great. But I'm done with that for episode 10. You go back to, to episode, to a different season, episode 10, Misa, the children, and the few others. They were good. They were okay. They had some great scenes. The end's kind of always a little cliche-ish for me. But I want something big to happen. I would love to see the White Walkers keep going.
We're not seeing them. We're not seeing them again.
You think they're done?
They're done for this season. We saw the last image we saw this season was the Night's King with his hands up and all the whites coming alive. That's it. We are not. I would be very shocked if we saw them again this season, because that was a beautiful money shot payoff scene. There is no need this season to revisit that. If we see the White Walkers, it will just diminish them, because at this point, the more they're starting to show them. Before it was all these guys are shrouded in mystery. We'll maybe see them once a season here or there, and we'll see them in the shadows. This time we saw them. They were fighting. They were out there. So
and people have to remember that the first shot of this show, the first scene, was involving White Walkers.
Right.
So you got to, just like a well-written book or a newspaper article, a lot of articles and books are written, and obviously there's an arc to them, and a lot of times they come full circle. So this series could end with a battle between the Realm and the White Walkers.
Right. Well, we didn't have a show last week, but I wanted to discuss that just for a minute if we could, because the White Walkers, that was the very first scene of this entire series. Every single thing has been building to these, somehow us, the people of Westeros fighting these White Walkers. Everything. You guys don't know. They're out there. We have to fight them. We have to be prepared. And now that they've shown them, we're at the end of that season 5. Let's say there's 2 more seasons left, okay, 6 and 7. How are they going to hold off? Because these White Walkers, and I said this at the end of season 2, it ends with the Whites and White Walkers going after the Fist of the First Men, invading it, and Sam is there caught in the middle of it. And we start season 3, and they're just kind of gone. And I felt that was weird. I didn't like that. I loved the end of season 2, but then when I saw the beginning of season 3, I was like, that was a bad payoff, because it didn't seem like it fit. Like, these guys are attacking this area, and then they just disappear out of nowhere. Like, why didn't they just keep going to the wall? And now this season, we have these guys raising this huge army of these whites even more. They're clearly going after Jon Snow. They see him flee to the wall. What's going to happen? Like, again, I don't know what's going to happen, but...
Do you like how much the White Walkers have changed, though, aesthetically?
I don't mind.
We've seen the more CGI stuff. I mean, does that bother you at all? To me, it doesn't. But
it doesn't bother me, because look, when they started this series, they had no idea what was going to happen. They didn't know how big of a show this was going to be, and obviously, as the show gets bigger, they need a bigger budget. Like the Hard Homes episode, that would not have been possible in season 1. The Blackwater stuff wouldn't have been possible in season 1. In fact, if Blackwater was filmed today, I think it would have been 10 times bigger, which is crazy to imagine because of how great of an episode it was. But, as the show goes on, the production budget gets bigger and they need to change things. I'm fine with that. But what I'm trying to understand is they clearly ended, even if they that wasn't the last episode, they clearly ended the season with the White Walkers are a massive threat. We're going into next season. Is this threat going to be addressed, or are they going to push it even further? Because now that we know that they're this massive threat out there, and they're coming for Jon Snow and the Night's Watch and all the people of Westeros, are they coming for them, or is this literally just going to get pushed back and back and back and further and further and further?
Do we see any mutinies at the wall with the Night's Watch letting the wildlings through?
We're going to see something. I don't know if it's going to be a mutiny, but everyone is, questioning Jon Snow. Last week, Ollie was questioning, Sam about Jon. This week we see Alistair looking and, people giving him sneers. I don't know if we're going to see a mutiny. We're definitely going to see some discontent among the Night's Watch. I don't know if we'll see a mutiny. We had a mutiny of the Night's Watch much earlier. I think
one of the best episodes of the series, Nala's Watch, has ended.
Right. Again, I have to rewatch it. I don't know if it's the best episode. One of the best endings, and definitely one of my favorite. I can look at that episode very much like I looked at Hard Home. You know, the episode was good, but if it wasn't for that last scene, it would not have been as good. The last scene pushed it to a new level. So it is a good episode. I have to go back and rewatch it. But the White Walkers, again, to me, they're a big threat. They've been a big threat since the very first episode. But now they're clearly the big threat. The writers have pushed them to the forefront. They are a big threat. How is this going to be addressed next season? Because I don't think it's going to be addressed the rest of the season. I think they'll maybe talk about it next episode, but they're obviously not going to do anything. But next season, to me, somehow this needs to be addressed in some way. Because if they just say, oh, the White Walkers are coming, they're on their way. Like, these guys seem to be they can move quickly. They're very dangerous. It's not like they couldn't be at the wall quickly if they wanted
to show the White Walkers in season 10 in episode 10 would diminish what we saw in episode 8.
I think so. I mean, that's just what I'm saying. Maybe
they go out on a high.
Right. That's exactly what I'm saying. Maybe they have something bigger, but how could they? At this point, why try to top that?
But that was my problem. I thought this episode would have been bigger. But not that scene. Then that just one scene. To me, it didn't do it, and that's where I'm walking away a little disappointed.
But I'm just talking about the White Walkers. I'm not talking about topping it. Obviously, they should be trying to top that scene. What I'm saying is, in terms of the White Walkers, that's done. There's no need to top that, and that's why I was very upset in season 3. And now, as watches ended, you had the dragon come in, torch the city. Dany took the city by force. She walks away, drops the whip. Money shot. That should have been the season 3 finale. I don't know what they could have done, but that should have been the season 3 finale, and I would have been so pumped. And it was great that was
what I said a moment ago, that Hard Home, well, I said earlier in the show, that Hard Home could have been an earlier part in the season. I like the fact that was episode 4 in that given season, because it keeps things interesting.
No. Okay, I'm not disagreeing with you.
The beginning parts of a season, as opposed to backlogging everything and making us sit there twiddling our thumbs being, all right, you're building up for about 5 episodes.
I 100% agree. I'm not disagreeing with you. What I'm saying is that was great for episode 4, the Now As Watches ended, the Dany and the dragons take the city. But they never did anything afterward. Yes, that was great for episode 4, but that was the only good.
What was it? Was that season 3?
Yes, season 3. That was the only good thing of Dany's story, really, in season 3, and the rest was literally her waiting outside, and then everyone shouts "Misa, Misa, Misa, Misa," and that's it. I mean, that was a terrible ending.
Which I accurately predicted would be the end. Got a song.
Yes, you did. But I agree with you. Yeah, I like that it was episode 4. I like that. But I would have liked it, but they never did anything afterward. So if you're going to do something like that, you need to then follow it up with something. It doesn't need to be this big thing, but it needs to be just as good, just as powerful, and it wasn't. And that's what I'm saying, is that they did this great thing with Hard Home. Yeah. It's not that they're not going to go back to Jon Snow. They will go back to Jon Snow. I'm sure he will talk about it. I'm sure stuff will happen. But the White Walkers, that's the money shot. They don't need to touch that again this season. That's all they need to do.
Well, one character that we haven't talked about yet is Cersei.
Yeah, that's big. I mean, not just Cersei, King's Landing.
They showed, first, before we get to her still in the, what we think's going to happen, which I think you and I know what's going to happen given what took place in the books. I don't want to spoil it for anybody out there listening, but or watching. But going back, the opening scene of this particular season, having that cold open, did that do anything for you, telling you more about Cersei as a character that you didn't know already? For me, it did not, and there's still, I'm not seeing it come full circle yet. Obviously, in the next episode, when something particular happens with Cersei, it might, but it maybe showed in that cold open to start this season what kind of character, what kind of girl she was, and how she was always had a little bit of an attitude, and she was kind of a know-it-all, and she was a very confident young woman. Did you like the way that this season started with Cersei? Because that's important that they start with her, because I think that sends a message out to the viewers that she's going to be a pretty big focus of this season.
No. I mean, the beginning to this season, and we did an earlier video on it, the beginning to the season was not good. I mean, it opened with Cersei, a flashback of Cersei being told a prediction of all the stuff we already knew. We didn't learn anything from it. It didn't really, like, I watched, I said, like, okay, like, is this supposed to be good? Is this supposed to lead to something? It didn't lead to anything.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, I don't, like, I look at that thing and I say, I don't see the payoff for it. Like, when I remember this season, however many years from now, or even a month from now when the show's over, I'm not going to remember that. It's just not a moment I look back and say, oh my God, can you believe the flashback when they revealed this? Or it doesn't reveal anything. It doesn't give any insight into her character. It just does nothing. It's not even a good it's not even a good opening. I mean, it didn't bring me back into this world. It does nothing for me. It was literally just fluff they threw in there. I mean, maybe they have a payoff. We'll have to see what happens in this next episode, but I don't see what it could possibly be, because it's not like that prediction revealed anything. It was literally, you'll be the queen and another will take your place, which is Marjorie. And I guess you could say the producers thought, well, that's Cersei's rationale. She's remembering that, and as a result of her remembering that moment, she said someone's going to take over, that she had to have this faith militant come into power, and that's her downfall. So I get the connection that the producers could have made there, but I don't think it's, I mean, I don't know if that's what it is, but it's just not translating. It's not something that I look back and say, oh, okay, because that prediction was made when she was a child, it made her think of this, which brought on the faith militant, and as a result, she's now in prison. Like, to me, like, I see the dots lining up, but it's just not, we didn't need that, especially as the opening of the season. Remember, that wasn't just a scene somewhere. It was the opening to season 5. It was the very first shot of this season. It didn't do anything, and it didn't do anything for me as a result. That scene. I could talk more about Cersei, but just that scene did not do anything for me.
Okay. Now, but Cersei this season, we've seen a side of her that, we haven't seen in the show. She's always been in power. She's always been in charge, but now we see her rotting almost in a cell underneath the Red Keep. So I'm a little bit I'm anxious to see how she's going to come back from this and get back to her elite status.
Okay, now can we talk about that for a second? Because we talked about earlier plot contrivances, and this is a perfect example. All of King's Landing right now is a plot contrivance. Marjorie and Loras go to jail. The son and daughter of a supposedly very powerful family of Westeros, they're thrown in jail, and nothing happens. Cersei, the queen mother, the former queen, gets thrown into prison. Like, I understand they're trying to show that Tommen isn't a good king, like he's very weak, but forget about Tommen for a second. The Tyrells don't have a family of their own. Like, why aren't they? Right. Why isn't their family saying, why aren't we invading the prison? I mean, it's like the faith militant, like, maybe they've done a bad job of showcasing it on the show, but like, I can't imagine this is an army. Like, to me, this is just a bunch of peasants with pitchforks who've taken over. Like, what about the Kingsguard, who are literally these big, strong, brooding men with armor, swords, training? Like, I feel like 5 of them could go in and take down this entire prison. I'm not understanding
it's not
why.
For you,
it is totally unbelievable. Like when Qyburn went into the prison last week, I thought there was going to be some jailbreak. I thought he was going to say, oh my God, the mountain who I'm resurrecting in my lab is going to come in here and break you out. And no, he says, just confess. Like, what? Like, I'm just not understanding how these people are being arrested. And it's not like they're under lock and key of the king and queen. They are under lock and key of a bunch of peasants, of a bunch of people who don't know how to fight, poor, have nothing. And I'm not understanding. And like I said, I understand that the writers and producers want to make Tommen look weak, right. But forget about Tommen for a second. Where's the Tyrell family? Where are the other Lannisters and the Kingsguard and these other people? Where are these other influencers who should be influencing things and making things happen? Like, If they want to say Tommen isn't powerful, fine. But what about the other people who are supposedly pulling Tommen's strings? I mean, is there no one else who's pulling this kid's strings and saying, go for your mother? Because to me, this is like them saying, well, everyone is weak, that no one is powerful. It just, to me, this is a way to keep them in prison because that's how they need to advance the story. Whereas I feel like if George was writing this in season 1 or 2, like when Ned was captured, the North went to war. As soon as Robb heard, hey, my dad's in prison, Robb said, that's it. We're going to war, bringing all the families together. We're taking over. Okay? That's it. This is before he was executed. This is when we went to prison. And the Tyrells, they have two of their people in prison, and they're trying to negotiate. And they're not even it just, to me, it's a plot contrivance. It's not what I want to see. It's not even that I want to see. It's not making sense to me. And this is why I'm critical of the show, because I feel like to be in that level of a prestige show, and it's not that this isn't a prestige show, but there are shows like The Sopranos and Oz and The Shield where I can look at things and I can talk about them, and every time I try to poke holes in them, I'll always have to just go deeper into the show, and it's just more of a better, richer show. Whereas Game of Thrones, I start to pull on things and poke holes, and it just creates problems like this. And I know it's a big world, and there's a lot of things to do, and I'm willing to forget little things here and there. But this, to me, King's Landing, which has been a massive focus of the show, to me, it just seems like they need to keep them in prison to drive the story forward. When, to me, I feel like, why is no one breaking them out of prison? I don't understand it. Maybe you can tell me. Go ahead, drink your wine from the arbor.
Sorry, I have to keep up my schedule.
Talk to me. I understand you have to be a little on wine. I understand.
Yeah, I do have to unwind and wine up. No, I agree. I think that it is kind of unthinkable that you wouldn't see the Lannisters get behind Cersei and try to free her, or it's the Kingsguard, or it's someone from the Crown, the Kingsguard, or it's the Tyrells coming in, and anyone. Like, there's nobody. And to me, what does that say about these people? Like, when they first did the show in season 1, they said don't trust anyone in King's Landing. Like, they made it like, oh, there are all these power players in King's Landing, but nobody's a power player, because if they were power players, they'd be getting these people out, or maybe they're trying to keep them in prison. But like, I'm just not seeing these major power players and these major things that people are talking about in King's Landing. It's not coming out to me. It's not making any sense. Well, how can it make more sense? So in episode 10...
I mean, how could it make more sense? Well, look, I understand they're trying to say Tommen is weak. I get that. Fine. Leave that there. With Qyburn came to visit her. Why didn't he say, Queen, I have someone in my service who I'm building to be this massive brute who can take these people out? Or why did he say, I'll talk to the Kingsguard? If Tommen's weak, obviously anyone could get in his ear and talk to the Kingsguard. So why aren't they doing that? It just, again, things aren't adding up. I mean, maybe someone can explain it to me and I'll be understanding, but I feel like there's just these so many holes that aren't being filled in, and they're just saying, well, just forget about them. She's in prison. Marjorie's in prison. Loras is in prison. Like, just accept it. And I don't know how you can accept it when the show has shown on other occasions that when these things happen, when royals are taken, things happen. When Ned Stark is in prison, Robb goes to war. When Ned's father and Ned's brother are taken and murdered and executed at the Capitol, Robert goes to war. Like, these moments lead to big things, and maybe that will happen next episode. Maybe we're just talking prematurely, but at this point, like, it just doesn't seem like that's going to happen.
I hope it does. I hope something.
Right. I hope it does too.
I hope something huge happens. I hope it's not just Cersei. I hope it's not a huge, trial, and we're eventually, I assume, going to see the Faith Militant and the High Septa get taken down. But how are they going to get it taken down? I want it to be done in the right way. I want the people that will be, who will get the power back to deserve it.
Well, here's the thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't see the Faith Militant as like this big deal. Like, I mean, early on this season, I guess I could say I didn't see Harpy. The Harpy is the big deal, the big deal in Essos. And this episode, they made them into this big deal. But with the Faith Militant, I mean, they showed these guys are in rags. They're just basically the priests and nuns of this world. Like, these people aren't an army. Whereas the Harpy are more part of the city. It's a little bit of a different situation. But, like, they're not a big threat. So, yes, I assume they are going to get taken down. But it's not like this, they need to get taken down and, oh, my God, it's going to be the liberation of this city. To me, they're just almost like a pest. And the fact that all these people, nobody are brushing off these pests in King's Landing, it's just like, I don't care if they get taken down because they are going to be taken down. It's a fact. Like, it's not like we're going to have the rest of the series and all of a sudden the Faith Militant's going to run the show. That would be crazy. But I just don't think they are. They're not an army. And I don't.
Do you think they get taken down next episode?
I don't know. But even whether they do or don't, whether we go into next season and they're all, Cersei, Marjorie, and Loras and all them are still in jail, I mean, hopefully they're not. Hopefully something shifts there to lead us into the next season story. But again, like, they're not – the Faith Militant aren't the White Walkers. They're not the Harpy. They're not this threat, you know, to me at least. It doesn't seem that way. They're not like this big threat. It seems like – and again, it seems like the Kingsguard could literally just go in, take all of them out in one swoop. And I don't see the need to bring them any further in the series because they don't do anything. They're not big enough to be a serious threat. You know, whereas you have the White Walkers coming, you have the dragons coming for Westeros. If the Faith Militant are there, I mean, how can they compete with White Walkers and dragons and all these other massive threats? Like, why keep them around? Because the King's Landing story this season, and I know I've said a lot of stories have been weak, but the King's Landing story has also been a little bit on the lighter side of the season.
But this could be the downfall of the Lannister family right here, led by, you know, the High Sparrow and the Faith Militant. The High Sparrow, by the way, what's the actor's name? Because he's done a
Jonathan Pryce. He's a
terrific job in that role. I really like the way he's coming across on screen. But I think, you know, if this is, you know, kind of, you know, an indication that the Lannisters are done and one family is going down the tube and somebody else is going to swoop in and take control, it's great. But they're going to have to fit, not only show us what's going to the deal with Cersei, but will the trial, if there is a trial shown in episode 10, will that encompass the Tyrells as well? I assume that it would. I hope it's all kind of like one swoop. And I hope it's figured out by the end of this season. I would like to see by the end of next episode if the Faith Militant survives and thrives into next season, or frankly, I would like to see them all whacked.
Let me ask you this question. By the way, I agree. Jonathan Pryce is very good, and he's doing a good job as an actor doing his stuff. I'm just saying, as a whole, that Faith Militant for me isn't working on a big picture scale. But let me ask you something. Next episode, final episode of the season, and I guess they're all moving ahead to the books. They're moving ahead in the books. You've read the books. At this point, how much more do you know much more? Like, is there stuff next episode that you say, okay, I know what's coming? Or is it like, wow, the show's moved past, I'm just on your page, Josh. I don't know what's coming next. How much more is there that they haven't done? I guess is what I'm asking.
Well, with Cersei, I know something happens next episode. Well, I think that happens. That obviously occurs in the books. So that I'm expecting to come. That I'm expecting to see, you know, on the screen. As far as anything big, the book kind of ends. The series kind of ends with the books in book 5 with. Yeah, I'll just come across and say it and I don't think this is spoiling anything, but it ended with Dany on a dragon in a field. So
right, and that happened this
episode. So, you know, I don't know where they're going with that, but I'm expecting a Cersei scene in the next episode. A lot of the Sansa stuff is all made up, so that obviously, you know, is something that I just can't come up with, and the book obviously hasn't, because that's a totally different character. the Tyrion stuff. Tyrion's not with Dany as of now in the book, so
they've moved ahead. You don't know any more than I do at this. After next episode, you and I will be on the same page, and all the viewers, I guess.
And I think that will be a good thing because there's a lot of people out there that are just, okay, what happens in the books, they expect to happen in the show. Will the show ever be better than the books? Well, I think if you look at Harry Potter, for example, I think your purists are going to tell you, your book people are going to tell you the books are just more descriptive. There's more time to tell a story. J.K. Rowling does an excellent job. Movies will never compare. But then there's people out there that love movies and who aren't avid readers who swear by what's on the big screen as opposed to what's written in pen or pencil, whatever. So I think that it's good for the show that eventually, the books are going to catch up to it. I think George has a lot of writing to do. I hope that he gets the next book, Winds of Winter, done.
They will probably, from what I've
2017.
Well, from what I've heard and from what's been coming out in the past few weeks is he's pushing to have it released. And my guess is the publishers and everyone wants to almost like release it to coincide with next season, which I wouldn't be surprised if they do because that's a huge marketing thing. I mean, I can only imagine I wake up in the morning and I see my Twitter feed is filled with, OMG, Game of Thrones, Winds of Winter coming out. I've already pre-ordered my book, yada, yada, yada.
Do you think it would be coming out before the season or after the season?
I'm sure they would love to time it to like it comes out. The book comes out on the first day of the season, but who knows what George is? Who knows if he's done? I mean, that's what they said they would like to happen, and I'm sure would be what they would love to happen, just as a publisher, just because you get your book out before, and that's a great selling point for the book, a great marketing ploy. But we don't know how far they've written into it. So maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It's irrelevant at this point because the show is changing things up. I mean, just tell me, in the book, is Shireen alive? Does that happen? Stannis burning Shireen in the books?
I think, to my knowledge, Shireen's alive. I mean,
I
apologize if I'm totally off on that. I haven't read the books in like a year, or more. But I think she's still alive.
Well, because okay. So here's the thing. Right before this, HBO.com, like if you go on YouTube and if you go on their website, they released like an insider on the episode. And I haven't been able to watch the whole thing because we've been doing this video, but I watched the first minute. And within the first minute, George, I think David Benioff, or no, DB Weiss, one of those guys, they say that George told them about this. And George didn't write this episode. George hasn't written anything this season. He's not writing anything next season. George told them about this. So that's why I asked, because I don't know if it happens in the book or is going to happen in the book. Because the way he made it sound was like this happens, and maybe this is happening in the future, and they've just incorporated it into the book, into the show, and it hasn't happened in the books yet, if you know what I'm saying.
I mean, I'm gonna double check here, but I don't think it's
right. What I'm saying is it hasn't happened in the books, and it's going to happen in Winds of Winter, and they know about it, the producers, and they just kind of pushed it earlier because that it fits with the story, which is interesting. It's interesting that they did that. So I mean, the truth is that.
She's not knowledge, Josh. She's not dead in the books.
Right. So this is so then what his statement would be, the way, if I'm reading his statement right, is that this is probably going to happen next book, and they're just kind of shuffling it forward to do Stannis' story this season, which is interesting. And it was an important moment. It wasn't the most pivotal moment in the series, but for Stannis, it was a pivotal moment. And we don't know what's going to happen with Stannis and how long he's going to last in the series. But if you go through Stannis' timeline, this is a very big moment. I mean, he burned his own daughter alive to win the throne, and that's got to be big. That's I can't wait to see where it goes. I don't know if they'll pay it off next episode and see what happens with it, but that's going to be a big thing for him. And there's so much we don't know about Melisandre. I mean, we've seen she's powerful, but we don't really know how powerful she is and if this is just all BS and a ploy, because she says Stannis is the Lord of Light, but then we've seen her look at Arya weird. when she's encountered her. We've seen her look at Jon Snow. So she's got a hidden agenda, and it's interesting to see where it's going to lead.
Well, I mean, that's another thing. I just want this season to end on a huge note going into next season, because to me, the season, as I've stated before, has been very sluggish, very slow. The hard home scene was my favorite and got me all excited. Besides that, yeah, there's a couple other scenes here and there that I liked, but overall, I always loved the show, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable television. I like the story. The story's great and everything, but to me, I just don't want it. I don't want it to rush. They're going to only have 20 more episodes to finish this whole complex story, and you see at the rate they're going.
You don't think they're going to pull an Entourage and have a Game of Thrones the movie?
Well, George would want one, and I would love it. You wouldn't like it, but I would love it.
No, it would not. We could talk for another 3 hours about why that wouldn't be a good idea, but just to keep going on about the season. I mean, that's a terrible idea. It's a slap, because if that happened, it would be a slap in the face to viewers. It'd be like if they ended the season or the series on some note, but they didn't really finish the story. And then they say, well, if you want to finish the story of the show, you have to pay, with movie tickets and what year ever it's going to end, you're going to have to pay $15, $18 to see the finished story. And even then, it really won't be everything, because we're going to cram it into a 2-hour movie. It's a slap in the face, and the Entourage movie, I haven't seen it yet, but I'll probably wait for it to come on HBO. But to me, it's a slap in the face to viewers to say, we're not going to finish our story here. And it's not like they couldn't finish the story. Like, I'd understand if the show was canceled and they said, well, to finish our story, we have to make a movie. Game of Thrones isn't going to be canceled. Game of Thrones is going to be able to finish their story as a series. And to those fans who watch the show, they need to finish it there. If they want to do spin-offs and other stuff in movies, that's fine. That's something different. But this story of the Iron Throne and all these characters, they need to finish in this show. Because to do it any other way is whoring themselves out to money, and they're just trying to make a quick buck. And I don't see that happening with Game of Thrones. Entourage, sure. Game of Thrones, no.
Well, it comes to that portion of the program for our final installment is prediction time, and it's brought to you, as a matter of fact, by iPick Theaters, one of the best movie theaters around, only available in certain affluent areas in the country. iPick Theaters for waiter-waitress service, wine, beer, dinner, dessert, pillows, blankets, and free popcorn. Visit them online at iPickTheaters.com. Josh, your final predictions for episode 10, Mother's Mercy.
Okay, quickly. Arya's going to kill Meryn Trent. Sansa's going to escape Winterfell. Cersei's going to get out of prison. And what it's going to end on, I would say the final shot. Oh, man. The final shot. Something with Brienne. I don't know what it's going to be, but I would say something with Brienne. I feel like we haven't talked about her. She's in the show. I feel like they're gonna try to make it like an end of season 2 where they're gonna some big ending. I don't think it's gonna be an end like season 3. I think it's gonna be more of a big moment ending. That's my prediction.
I think the final shot is something that happens in a finale, a final scene, a final chapter in one of the books, and it has to do with Varys, and it has to do with him coming back to King's Landing, and it has to do with a certain member on the council. I'll leave it at that.
One more prediction, David. I predict that this time next week, will there be a podcast? I'm asking.
But that's not a prediction. That's a question.
Right. That's a question. Do you predict there'll be a podcast next week?
Sure. Why not?
There you go. There you have it, folks.
Do you?
Yes. I predict
75% chance.
Yes. That sounds good. About 75.
Fair. Okay, so I predict that's my final scene. I predict something happens in King's Landing that results in a death.
Okay.
I do predict that Arya not only kills Maren Tran, but kills the gambler. And obviously, I have no insider knowledge or anything on any of this. I also think that Theon kills Ramsay.
Yeah, I agree with that. That could happen.
And Theon escapes along with Sansa. And I think Brienne does have a part in rescuing them. And I think we do see something involving Cersei that liberates herself from all the stuff that she's done in the past. I do think we'll see the Faith Militant taken down to a degree. I don't know if they'll go away this whole episode, but I think something will happen involving them as well.
I think those are good predictions, especially the one with Theon. I didn't think about that, but I think if they want to change Theon's story around, I mean, they've kept him around this long, and I think you could see something happening with Theon and Sansa, them escaping, because he needs a change in his story, and Sansa needs to be whisked away somewhere as well. So I think that's a good prediction. I sign on to that one.
All right, Josh, Prince of Dorne, any parting words on tonight's live video cast?
Valar Morghulis.
And I'll just leave it at Valar Dohaeris. Have a great night, everybody. Thanks so much for watching Essos2Westeros. And we will see you next week after episode 10 of this 5th season of Game of Thrones, Mother's Mercy. Take care, everyone.